there are polls that state that the majority of Australians want immigration to be at a much lower increase than the 700,000 over the next 2 years. In light of that, why should the government proceed down that path?
Well, I'm going to start with you, Dean, because you've been quite active in calling for cuts to immigration.
For a number of years, if we take a step back, I think it's fair to say that Australians have a high level of confidence in the immigration program that has made the modern Australia. I think we would all agree that that has been a very, very strong and successful program, and it's one of the standout virtues of our country. But that consensus, I believe, is fragile. And what I mean by fragility is that people are looking for answers, explanations. Why is it that for the next 2 years there'll be 715,000 migrants coming to our country when people like James are experiencing rental stress and issues? So in order to maintain high levels of public confidence in immigration, we need to have a capacity in our country to be able to talk about it openly, have the evidence demonstrated to us and revealed to us. Why is it, how is it that we get to 715,000 over the next 2 years? In the Howard era, the average was about 110,000 people coming to our country. In the years preceding the pandemic, that was about 240,000. So when we're asked to...
This is a post-COVID catch-up, and clearly businesses are desperate for workers, right?
And so there's a couple of points I'd make in regards to that, PK. What is the excess capacity in the Australian economy already to be able to be fulfilling some of those jobs? That's the first thing. The second thing is, as Katy has admitted, you know, this is a wicked problem that we are facing, and it just seems to me at this particular point in time, we risk breaking that consensus, because 715,000 over 2 years is an astronomically large figure. Now, if Katy and the government can demonstrate to us that there is a plan, that in getting to 715,000 it was modelled, and these are the various inputs, then I think we can have a much higher level of confidence than we currently do. But in the Senate, at the Senate estimates process, very, very vigorous process, the way that governments, whether it's this government or previous governments, the way that governments come at decisions about what that immigration number is opaque. And Australians are looking for a greater level of confidence and understanding.
Jahin, I want to bring you in, if I can.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we are having a big debate in this country about levels of migration. Do you think it's fair enough to have a rethink about how many migrants we're bringing in?
I mean, Dean, I respect you so much in the stance that you have, but I think I'd love to politically disagree with what you're mentioning. I think immigration, time and time again, has become the scapegoat in many cases for a broken system that is affecting Australians in many cases. I think you're talking about figures, and I guess I understand the 700,000, and it's a great statistic to hold on to in this case. But you're also forgetting what immigration has done for this country. If, as Australia, we're talking about... No, I completely understand, but...
No, just let him finish and I understand.
In Australia, if we're talking about being a valued, multicultural society, and we're talking about 700,000 immigrants, you have to understand how immigrants, international students, families, first-generation migrants, second-generation migrants, how they've boosted the economy, how a lot of the businesses that are doing really well started from immigrants coming to this country. I'm a first-gen migrant. I wasn't even born in this country, and I get to be, as a 22-year-old, on stage at Q&A. Yeah. And I think things like this, you're missing out if you're just looking at blatant, blanketed numbers without really looking at the results that has impacted economies, local councils, states, that whole broader picture.
OK, I want to bring in Luke, because, Luke, I can feel like you've got strong feelings here. Have I got strong feelings? Am I feeling big feelings?
Just every time immigration gets mentioned as an issue, it really feels like we're ignoring... like you were saying, they're blaming the other for issues that are... Like, Australia has a certain amount of land mass, so if you have enough people standing shoulder to shoulder in Australia, people will start falling into the ocean. We're nowhere near that. There is a mathematical equation that is people...
We've got to house people, right?
Yeah, but there's a point where obviously there's people getting old and leaving the workforce and people dying, and then there's a certain amount of immigration. Australia can take as many people as it wants. We're a very lucky country. I think it's really important to put laws in place to make sure that that's not getting abused by... Like, the reason the businesses want to bring more labour in is because they want to be able to have leverage on them, and so they can underpay them. So we need to fix that. but migration's not the problem. It's the our infrastructure, our the housing crisis. It's not. These are not migrants' fault. This is like if you bring in a bunch of builders, then they can build my house. Like I don't like immigration being blamed.
Bring in the builders.
Well, and if they're not builders, well, then we've got an education system, or you can have financial incentives to get people who live here and who are
Sure,
coming
but
in
this question about how quickly, I mean, Katy Gallagher, it is a real question. Every day I host Radio National Breakfast, and every day I'm inundated from the left and the right with text messages concerned about us keeping up with the supply side for the level of migration. Do you think that's fair, and should it be more transparent, as Dean's called for?
Well, I think it's pretty transparent. I mean, it's published in the budget papers. We're having a big discussion.
The number is
We're having
published.
a big
the explanation is
discussion
not published.
here about it. We have Senate estimates where we go through it in pretty fine detail, and it's built upon a history, obviously, of immigration numbers agreed to by previous governments. I think what we're going through at the moment, and there is a catch-up, even after these 2 years where we do see an uptick in the number of people coming through on our migration numbers, we're still below where we would have been had COVID not closed our borders. So we had negative migration for a couple of years, but had COVID not happened, we would still be behind where we are at the end of these 2 years. And we do have to balance that up with, skilled migration. The country has been built on a proud history of immigration and skilled migrants coming here, settling, raising families, contributing to our community. So I feel like this debate, and whilst acknowledging we've got issues around housing and all the rest of it, I do feel like this debate is something people go to as a way of not taking responsibility for other challenges in the economy.
Is that right, Dean Smith? Low-hanging?
And it's an easy way to do it, frankly.
No. So I'd approach it, in the reverse. In order to maintain that high level of community endorsement and agreement with migration in our country, we need to allow Australians to be better informed about how these numbers are calculated, for Australians to engage in a process where they can talk about urban congestion, they can talk about ideas. Because the reality at the moment is the great bulk of those people that come to our country, and they are welcomed and the country is better for it, go to two places. They go to Greater Sydney or Greater Melbourne.
But that's where they think the jobs are.
Agreed. But if migration or immigration is going to be such a strong and positive driver of a future Australia, then they need to be encouraged to go to other places as well.
And this gets us...